welcome to everyone who is joining us live in this particularly exciting session, which I'm really looking forward to, firstly because of the broader conversation, and secondly because of the individuals that we have involved with us today. So, you know, with Henneri, we've got Shelagh, and we've got Prof. Shirley. And I imagine through the course of the day, you probably heard from these individuals and with the different topics that are there. And this topic for me really brings to the forefront the kind of overarching, what we call, you know, forest from the trees kind of view, and the whole concept of digital transformation. So I'm passionate about digital transformation. As I was saying just now to Henneri, I've been working with it for the last 10 years in different methods, and it's all about the adoption phases that we've always looked at. An example. Early 2000s, I was founding co-chairman of Mobile Monday in South Africa, which is about driving a mobile-first engagement and economy in Africa. And I remember at those stages, an executive, one of the big retail companies, saying to me, "Dylan, I get that all the young people are on this, and this is going to help our retail sales, but I want a cell phone to only be contacted by my family and friends. I don't want to have any other kind of messages and engagement. So therefore, I'm not going to go on this mobile and digital transformation route." So that's 2008. We still see it to this day in different aspects, and that's what we're here to talk about, specifically from the human capital HR function and transformation. The other role that I have been playing for the last 4 years, I stepped down, and I was co-chairman of the board of the Africa E-commerce Forum. We're also around driving digital transformation to the digital economy for Africa's economic and social development, and similar conversations that we're seeing. So transformation and digital transformation, we all know it. It's not a new word. Every single company is talking about it. How many are actually doing it? That is a whole different story. And HR digital transformation, the definition that is online, is this transition of a business based on traditional manual processes to a business that has technology at its core in all functions. Firstly, from an internal perspective, which is employee-facing, operational, and then from an external perspective, which is the customer-facing side. Transformation is the outcome of digitization. It is not the process of digitization itself. So it's not just digitizing a platform, it's the process, which is absolutely critical. So with this, I want to introduce our brilliant panelists for the day. Excuse if you hear a child in the background. I've got no control over that. So firstly, I'm going to start off with Henneri, because we were chatting just now from Simplify, and also head of careers at Careers 24, which I'm sure almost anyone who's listening to this panel has been on before if they've been in a job search function, but also around the Simplify side, what you explained to me was so interesting, as an operational delivery platform for the kind of the shop front, the front end facing concepts of Career 24, which you also white label to other businesses. So Henneri, I'm going to start with you. Digital transformation for you in a nutshell, why it's so important in the HR function.
I think it's quite important in the HR function because HR is so interlinked with what our businesses are currently doing. Now, using an example of what is currently happening in the market right around the world, COVID has kind of put everything on its head. And companies that wasn't looking at digitizing their businesses started looking at doing exactly that. And companies that has been in that process has fast-tracked that digitization. So HR, because HR is so critical to every single organization, because there's no organization that operates without a workforce. HR should be, and we're seeing is becoming one of the departments that's in the forefront of digitization, doing these transfers into a digital environment. And it's critical because it's going to allow us to build better, more suited workforce for what is happening in our organizations. And it's quite a broad term because you can look at so many elements within the HR function with an organization that needs to go through this transformation, and it's busy going through this transformation. And we see that these elements on various levels. But it's good to see that it's being driven into that area or that direction by what is happening around us in the world at the moment.
Henry, and I love what you said, that HR is becoming very much at the forefront of the digital transformation within an organization. Now, that sounds obvious, but over the last 10 plus years, I've seen challenges with HR function being put into almost an administrative function. And it's those organizations that really embracing digital transformation that are elevating it to a very strategic function. Sheila, I'm going to go to you now. Prof, I know you just came off sessions. I'm going to give you a little breather and come to you after Sheila. So Sheila, I mean, your role is incredibly interesting because you've been, Media 24, and you're head of GM for HR at Media 24 now, but you've been there for a number of years. And this is something that started as a publishing house. So you've gone through this incredible digital transformation from physical to print to digital. What are you seeing in digital transformations really standing out for your intro and synopsis?
Dylan, that's actually a great springboard for what I want to say, because I think for us it's been a process that has been, on the one hand, led by how our business is transforming, and on the other hand, also led by HR. And it's a bit like a dance. Sometimes it's the business that's pushing, sometimes it's HR that's pushing, but in the end, you have to keep in step. As you rightly say, the media industry has been dramatically disrupted. And over the last 20 years or so, particularly the internet has caused a fundamental shift in how media is consumed right around the world. And of course, that's had an influence on media companies here in South Africa, just like it has in the rest of the world. And so from having been products that were mostly created in print and distributed in the real world, they are now mostly products that are created online and distributed virtually, and mostly through people's mobile phones. And so our approach with that disruption was that from a business and strategic point of view, we had to be ahead of it. We had to be ready. We weren't going to wait for disruption to happen to us. We had to step forward and make sure that we were moving our products online, in some cases, even when our readers weren't 100% ready for it. So from a business perspective, a lot of the change management that was involved was actually involved in taking our communities of readers with us, meeting with subscribers. When we moved one of our titles, Die Burger in the Eastern Cape, purely online, there was a lot of engagement that happened between the editor and the local community to say, this is where you can go online, this is where you can continue to get the same content, and it's going to be okay. You'll be able to get everything. Don't stress about it. The fact that you don't have a physical newspaper in your hand anymore is not the end of the world. You'll still be able to get the product and the content that you love and read the stories by the journalists that you want to read. And I think what that told us was two things. Firstly, it's important to take the brave step when you know that you need to. There's no point in waiting. It really doesn't help, even though it's hard. And secondly, that when you do that, you have to manage the change. You have to take your customers with you. And that applies to your external customers just in the same way as it applies to your staff. So that change management process and having a very high touch process, even as you become much more digital, is fundamentally important.
I love that. That is absolutely superb. I love how you talked about it's a bit of a dance. So you need to get in step, and that's not only the business being in sync with the customer or the consumer becoming in sync with the business. A lot of companies will go, well, hang on, I'm going to wait for the consumer, the customer to lead the change. Whereas the learnings from your journey, Media 24, is embracing the change and saying, hang on, we're not going to wait for disruption to happen. We're not going to have a Kodak moment. We're going to Uber ourselves before we get Kodak, and start leading that change, which takes, what I've seen with the executives I've worked with, a lot of courage, a lot of energy and commitments, because it's more often than not driven by the internal change to realize that external front-facing change. There's an incredible quote that I love from a book called Flight of the Buffalo, written in 1984. And it says, more often than not, people fear change because they overestimate the value of what they have and underestimate the value of what they might gain by giving that up. So the fear factor is such a big thing. And Henneri was talking to me this offline just now, how fear it impacts how we make decisions. And maybe now, Prof, I can move. Experience is, I'm not even going to try to touch on it because I was reading it and going, okay, how have you done all this already? And you've got so much that you're still going to offer, not only South Africa, but the rest of the world. You know, the different boards you're sitting on, the different levels of individuals with sets of experience that are not how we say, they haven't gone through the same digital adoption journeys as most of their businesses, customers and consumers have, but are leading these organizations and making the critical decisions, which is based on their extensive experience, but the world has changed. What you've been doing and seeing, what is your synopsis that you want to put forward to start this?
Thank you very much to Dylan and the esteemed panelists. I just got off a session a few minutes ago talking about the future is human. And I do fundamentally believe that philosophically, deeply, that human beings will always be at the center of whatever changes happen in the world. We are the givers and the receivers and the catalysts for the changes that we see happening over many centuries. And as we navigate our way into what we talked about as fourth industrial revolution, we got overlaid and overtaken by a thing called COVID, and of course the acceleration on all fronts took place in an unprecedented way. And I think many of us were either caught napping or were halfway through a cycle of trying to just conceptualize, understand what does this mean, how does this work, how do I get this thing, to benefit and add value in my organization, and how do I take my people with me while I do all of this. And so I think every organization just contextually is in a cycle, I suppose, of its own in terms of what is or how it's prioritizing its approach to digital transformation. Now we know that we live, we talk about VUCA times, right? So volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. It's a lovely way of just pulling all of those things together. And it's really challenging here, but our personal lives, in some ways, we live in a paradox. Our personal lives have been made simple through well-orchestrated, digital services, and we all enjoy a few clicks on the screen, and we can order in our food, we can watch a movie, and we expect at least that it's an easy request and it will come. I think the experiences that we give our employees sometimes are, not as aspirational. Our personal lives have a near flawless technological enablement, around us all the time. It's intuitive. It doesn't frustrate us. It's easy to access. You can buy a new phone and you can get up and running without the whole pile of pages that used to come with, this is how you switch it on and all the rest of it. And I think that we need to create that kind of employee experience, for our people. I think that there are many benefits to putting into place a set of experiences for our employees that will ensure that they have better work satisfaction, that they are more engaged, that they are more productive as well, especially now in this hybrid work, world of work that we're in, of combinations of remote or wherever or whenever in the office, and become more efficient and effective. And I think that I think one of my previous stints in an organization, I think that we all know, I think it was Willis that said something to the effect that employee experience equals customer experience squared. So EX equals CX squared. And if we can just get some of those principles clear in terms of our narrative and our journey and the processes that we are mapping as we move down this digital pathway, and enhance the digital experience for our workers and adapt and become more proficient and productive, I think, we will be in a position to do, as Sheila, you say, the change management that needs to go with this and instill confidence for people to actually see, yes, this is something that I must embrace, as I embrace all the other things that I do intuitively and seamlessly every single day.
Well, I mean, I really love that. I love what you're saying about the embracing of it, and got some really key, powerful words that you're bringing out there. But it's this concept of embracing it for me also becomes a bit of a paradox in itself. Just going back to what you're saying, the paradox of our time is that change is constant. Paradox of our time is that we have to embrace change in order to keep up with the current reality. So we're constantly chasing what is ahead of us, which means that we can never become stagnant. Yes, these are things that every company talks about. Every organization puts in, their principles and guiding cultural frameworks, but living it is a completely different story a lot of the time, because implementing it, this is the challenge. How do you implement this? I mean, I've gone through a number of transformation processes, and as you rightly said, I love that. It all came down to people. It wasn't the processes or the technology platforms or that really failed. It was the people aspect, the implementation from a people aspect, the buy-in, the understanding, the leadership, saying, we're doing this regardless. We're not doing it just for the sake of it. We're actually changing our business. So perhaps I'm going to jump back to you, Sheila. Looking back, so we know we're going through this transformation journey. We've all come through incredible pathways. I mean, from Henneri's experience, your experience, Prof. Shirley. If you could look back and talk and talk back to Sheila, 5 years ago, to use a short-term period, and say, Sheila, do these things now. This is what I've learned, or I wish I'd known then, in order to take on and tackle this challenge of digital transformation in HR.
Well, maybe let me start by disclosing in public one of the most horrible mistakes that I've made in my career, because I think I learned a huge lesson from it. And this started when we started our proper HR digitization journey. The first thing that we wanted to do was to take performance management online. And the mandate was simple: make it happen online, build something, right? So what did I do? I got all the HR people into a room, and I said, guys, this is a wonderful opportunity. Tell us what you would like to see in the perfect performance management system. And we came up with a list of features as long as your arm. It was amazing. This thing had all the bells and whistles. It was 360s, it was ratings, it was dynamic. I cannot even begin to describe how many different layers of scorecards it had layered on top of it. It just did everything but brush your teeth. And we presented the spec to management, and we, being very persuasive people, persuaded management that this is what we needed to do, and they all agreed. And so we went off and built it. And every HR person, colleague in the HR community outside of our company that I showed the thing to thought it was fantastic. They wished that they could have it too. I was giving out the business cards of our developers left, right, and center, except that the staff hated it. They really, really hated it. It was cumbersome. It was clumsy. There were too many steps to go through. It was confusing. They didn't know what to do. And I didn't want to listen. I kept on thinking, well, we must just train you better. We obviously haven't done our change management job well enough. We must just train you better. Until we had a change of CEO, and the CEO who was appointed was somebody who'd previously been one of our editors. And the first thing she said when she sat me down was, the system has to go. And I just dug my heels in. I was like, no, but you don't understand. Let me explain it to you properly. We clearly haven't done a very good job of explaining. And it took me a couple of months, honestly, to actually get to the point that this was not going to go away. And I actually had to eat humble pie and back down and recognize that what my users were telling me, what my customers were telling me, was in fact true. And so we did a complete redesign, but this time from the customer's point of view. We didn't ask the HR people, how would you design your perfect system? We asked the users, what would make sense for you? You have to use this thing every day. How would you like it to be? And we had them design a flow, literally drawn on a piece of paper, which we've built and which we've been using for years, ever since. It's simple. It's a fairly basic and fairly robust methodology. But I think that the huge lesson, and what I would have told myself back then, was don't be arrogant. Go and ask the people who are going to use the system. Don't ask your HR colleagues. They're important, but they're not your customers. Go and ask your customers what they need and what's going to work for them.
Thank you. I love that the concept of this is the mistake, this is how we learn, which I think we can probably carry through as we share some of these insights. The online performance management. I can imagine everyone who's listening right now is going, yeah, our company had that, probably use that exact same line. And it was based on someone going, great, we're going to implement this. But the energy and effort to get buy-in before rolling something out and to customize it to the user is significant. Also because why? We're under a specific strain within our organization. So Shelagh is sitting as the person who's doing this digital transformation, so online, putting KPIs online, but you're reporting to someone who's reporting to Exco, and they're going, well, we want change now. These are the deadlines, these are your KPIs. And we've got to meet those because we evaluated on achieving those. And often that becomes such an impediment to taking the time and energy to say, hang on, we can do it a shorter period, we can do it at a longer period of time, more effective. And just there's a quote that as you're speaking about it, this for me resonated. It's from George Westerman. It says, when digital transformation is done right, it's like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. But when done wrong, all you have is a really fast caterpillar. So thank you for sharing that, really. Let's not be the fast caterpillar. Let's become a butterfly. Henry, maybe following on that, maybe a mistake that you really learned from that you could advise yourself to do differently on.
Look, I think Sheila's example is pretty much the same example I can give from a product that we developed. So the Simplify recruitment management tool was developed a couple of years ago that we introduced into the market to automate certain processes in recruitment and try and help recruiters to perform certain tasks a lot easier, a lot quicker. And we've also learned that lesson through not engaging with clients and understanding exactly what is the pain points and what is the things that a user on a user level wants to change is sometimes totally different from what this big idea and this wonderful new look and feel type of platform that we've developed in our own enclosed environment. And what we've seen is when we started listening to clients and we started listening to what is this little pain points which the recruiters and the users and the line managers were facing, and when we started addressing it, we saw that the usage of the platform started increasing. And when the usage of the platform started increasing, you started getting the benefits from it. So you started getting data, you started getting analytics, and now you have a tool that is actually delivering more valuable insights into the business than what you originally thought of. So originally you thought, okay, I'm going to automate certain manual processes. But the end goal was never to get the data. Now you're sitting with this data, and this data allows you to revisit certain things that you probably didn't know was wrong, or you probably didn't know where you can improve on. And that was a very valuable lesson for us. And it kind of changed the way that we look at engaging these projects with clients. You have to have this consultative approach. You have to establish what is the goal from the client or the users itself. You must make it easy. It cannot be cumbersome, complicated, over thought of. So it's those points that Shelagh mentioned in her example, we've learned, and it's just valuable lessons. So you have to listen to the users.
I love it. So listen to the user. That's taking the feedback, which means you've got ego in terms of what you're doing. You're going, oh, here's my big shiny thing. You must love it. You must love it versus let's co-create it together. So get rid of that ego in that process. But there's another part of it, and coming from something that stood out for me in my Deloitte days. A director said to me, Dylan, one of the things that we got to do here is build the plane while we fly it, and that really resonated with me in terms of the way that we use technology as part of digital transformation, so digitization process. More often than not, we go in, and we're seeing this change, but we've gone in with a big transformation project, which would be a digital platform play, for example, like what you get the example of now. And we say, okay, here's the project, here's the timelines, here's the investment, start and end. Whereas we almost got to say, here's the vision, and we're going to start it, and we're going to test and learn and adapt as we build it. So we haven't set a rigid framework and saying that has to be the framework that we end up with. We're starting with the concept and building as we go, which is it's a different way of making investments. It's different ways of seeing project timelines, and it's a different way of how we can sell this in to different levels of the organization, all the way up to those who are putting a tick on the financial investment. And then you've got to project manage it, because it's difficult to say, well, it's going to cost me this amount when I don't actually know, because I'm testing and learning as I go along. So there's a whole lot of challenges that come with that. And maybe I want to lead on to Prof. So Shirley for that. And Shirley, I know you got so many learnings, and I was watching some of your videos on YouTube, obviously around your book that you've written. But I want to challenge you on one thing, leaning on what Henneri was saying there. You sit on a number of boards, specifically some listed companies. Your journey to that and bringing in digital transformation as a key strategic focus area, what would you share in the learnings of doing that? And I'm very interested, because I've seen this being kind of pushed to the side more often than not, but you're seriously making an impact at significant companies with massive employee bases. How do you get that buy-in? How do you get that transformation happening?
Thank you, Dylan. It's a very, very interesting question, because there's a whole lot that one can, put into it. But I will say that I think every organization has begun to understand that and redefine and crystallize what digital transformation means strategically. We have seen new job descriptions, new job titles emerge, new people and spaces in our organograms, and new skill sets that we haven't thought of before, that we now need. And I think when we need them on the boards, we need them in our C-suite. So we now have chief digital officers, etc. And some people are still trying to work out what these people do. But we do know that we need them, because they're part of a part of our strategy into the future. And the question really is, how do we, through all of this, create a real sustainable value over the long term? If we want to talk strategy and we want to talk big investment, and you want to say, what kind of experience are we trying to create for our staff, for our clients, for anybody that interacts with us across, if you want to use HR, across the total value chain, for example, of HR, from the time you're starting your recruitment, you're starting to entice people into your organization. People will be saying, but where is this organization on a scale of 1 to 10 when it comes to being digitally savvy? How have they integrated that into the overall experience that they're giving staff, customers, communities, suppliers, vendors, etc.? How does this play out in my relationship and my experience with them every day? If these are my key stakeholders and I have to do a stakeholder map for the board, what does it look like in terms of the digital play that is happening within each of those segments, and are we doing this as smartly as we possibly can. And this all goes back to how we're creating value for the business sustainably over time. And yes, the adoption cycles and the investment cycles are different, but it's not that linear thing that you talked about earlier that says we got a concept, we're gonna run around and do the research, and we're gonna come back. And yes, and we haven't listened to any of the key stakeholders in this either. That's a big one that we missed. So I'm glad that it was raised. And then of course there's along with the adoption, there's the implementation plan, and then most importantly there's the impact and the results that we're looking for. Are we getting that? And are we improving our ability to execute across disciplines and across the value chain? I mean, we talked now about performance management. We were in the middle of recruiting people when COVID came, so we had to now recruit people digitally, like we're sitting here. Are we getting? Are we? Where are the flaws in this process? Have we run a proper governance process? Are people going to come back at us and say, "Well, I didn't have the opportunity to have a face-to-face interview, and that is why I didn't get the job." So what are you going to say? The tools failed you, or you ineffective in some way, or did it improve and enhance the value of the experience that you got? And for me, when we talk about these things at the strategic level, one always wants to know, either the value, is it going to be experienced, not just created, but experienced, and is the impact going to be lasting? And I love the bits about, co-creation and collaboration and listening, and getting the magic out of that, as opposed to trying to grow this thing sort of, underground and then do the big reveal, which is, the way we used to do things before. So yeah, just my few thoughts, Dylan, for you there. But it is complex. Let's not kid ourselves. But we have to be deliberate in our thinking about value creation and the experiences that we're giving a broad array of stakeholders in terms of the choices that we make.
I love that. The fact that you've got a broad array of stakeholders. Often we're almost too myopic in the way that we approach it. And that's why. Why do we go and take a more narrow view? Because it's easier for us to engage with it. It's easier for us to feel confident about control. And I think that's also part of the big challenge, is the desire or need to control a process and control the inputs and outcomes, versus taking an approach of saying, I don't know how this is going to work. I can't control it, but I can learn through it and influence it to get to what I call, as a futurist, as close as possible to the most ideal future. And that also talks to the whole concept of linear, old school thinking was strategy. Here's A, how do I draw a line to B and then just work backwards from B? And now when we look at strategy, we say, hang on, there are a whole lot of possible outcomes that we could get to, depending on the decisions that we make as we progress. And we want to empower ourselves to make the best decisions to get us as close as possible to the most ideal or preferable future. I also love the fact that you talked about stakeholder engagement mapping. Powerful, powerful process. I don't think we do this effectively enough internally often. So I know that from a client basis, we'll do it, we're trying to sell something to the client, so we'll do it. But internally, to understand the stakeholders from an executive level, board level, through to management, down to the actual, those that are getting engaged with the product. Where are they on their digital journey? How do they use it? What are their thoughts? And I think that is powerful. Now the question you raised, and Henneri, I'm going to pass this on to you, and then Shelagh. And I know there might be commonalities here. We're going to see if there are. We're talking about, is this going to be interesting? What is value to you in digital transformation, and how are you going to measure it?
Yeah, thanks for the trick question. So I think value for me in digital transformation, in the space that we play in, is really to drive efficiency. We have, and let's look at from a recruiter space, because that's the area that we deal in a lot. We have these individuals that works extremely hard, dealing with massive volumes, and it's sometimes very mundane tasks. So to free up that person's time so they can focus on more strategic planned functions, projects, etc., is massive to a business, because now you're actually getting so much more value versus the value from that input that person is giving. And personally, I think it's also to do with growth for those individuals. So if I have to put a measure on that, I would probably say that the success of this would be measuring the increased efficiency that we get out of our people and our workforce through automation. And I think that's critical, because a lot of times we see automation and people see automation as a risk that I'm going to lose my job or I'm going to lose my function. The robot's going to take over. But it's actually the opposite, is if you can sort out these little manual things that keeps us busy, you can focus on more strategic, more important factors. That's how I would measure it.
Thank you. Sheila, do you want to build on that?
Yeah, sure. So when I hear value, I think about it in terms of costs and benefits. Value is about what the process or the transformation delivers, but it's also about what it cost you to get there and was it worth it. So I think about those two aspects. And Henneri, I completely agree with you that efficiency can be a key and a really important outcome of digital transformation. There can be a few others as well. One, which is better decision making, to be able to use big data and analytics to make better decisions about who you hire, about how you retain them, about how you manage performance, also really key. But none of it is value unless you can tick two boxes. The first one is, does the person who receives it care about it? And the second one is, was it worth it? My favorite picture of all time is a photo of a light aircraft on a very dusty landing strip somewhere in Africa. And the aircraft is on the ground and there's a pride of lions sleeping in the shade of the wing. And the caption is, value is in the eye of the beholder. Those lions don't care at all that this thing that they're sleeping under can fly. It's just the shade that matters to them. So first we have to answer the question, what does the user care about? Do they care about efficiency and automation, or could they actually do it just as well with one person doing a hell of a manual job? Do they care about what it is that we're doing for them? And if they care about it, what's the most cost-effective way we can take to get there? And in that sense, I've often found that the thing that feels like your worst enemy is your best friend, and that is having a tight budget. Because having a tight budget forces you to make difficult decisions. It forces you to make trade-offs, and it forces you to decide to do some things and not other things. I think often in HR, we make the mistake of wanting to do everything for everyone all at the same time, and it's very difficult to get that right. If we're focused and we have a budget that restricts our choices to only the things that are the highest priority, that make the most difference, it's often a lot easier to make good strategic choices and therefore to create value.
I love that. I love both what you're saying, they bring together. So it's value is contextual, linking it to what Shirley was saying. You've got to then identify what value means across your stakeholder map in order to make it real, because that's going to help form the digital transformation process. You talked about better decision-making, efficiencies, freeing up time, increasing productivity. And I suppose at the end of the day, we're measuring this by an output of the business. So business sustainability, growth. Is it a revenue play? Are we getting more operating efficiencies? So we're increasing our margins. And that's where you'd want to measure it. But the direct line becomes a challenge. As someone who's not, I don't come from that HR function, but looking at it saying, well, this is critically important to the development of the business. And maybe, Shirley, in building on that, but also answering a question that Andre Young has posed, which I think is great. He's asking, should HR be driving the investment plan to create the new capabilities to get our stakeholders to the digital expression and experience or digital transformation? So could it be championed through you? What are you saying?
No, absolutely. And I want to thank Andre. I know Andre's very dynamic in this space, and I knew you would answer a question like that. So definitely, I think that that we have to find a way for HR to support businesses to operate in these new kinds of models, to, like he says, think, say, do, experience new models of execution in every interaction across the business disciplines, to create higher levels of, again, value. So for me, when we look at some of these things, we, suppose I'm talking, some time now ago, we think about, here's a concept, here's an idea. Let's do an as is and a to be, and let's understand what that to be is going to look like. And I think that, we're often trying to do these things in trying to get to a perfect state. And I like what you were saying, Dylan. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's messy because it's emergent. We're working with fluid, frameworks that we haven't tried and tested before. And so it takes a little bit of a leap of faith. And yes, we know business cases are all about what is the objective, what is the as is and to be story, what are the cost, benefits, and risks? What are the risks if we don't do this? If we're just going to think that if we retain the status quo, we're going to continue to be as effective as we were 10 years ago, is not going to fly either. So we have to be adaptable and more agile and understand that monolithic systems, cannot be nimble, cannot be responsive. It takes, imagine how much time you can save, just looking at people's irrelevant emails and messages that they waste their time on often. I think that, you're giving your organization a future technological trajectory that is going to be much more enabling and more unified in terms of the experiences that people actually will have. So I think that, and I like what Sheila is saying also about, do we care about it? And at the end, was it worth it? But I think one of the other things I just want to toss into the pond here is around not only using the AI and the machine learning and the algorithms, not only using that to say, are we making the very best decisions? Have we triangulated all of this information and made this web of interconnectedness so that we can see where the priorities and the trends are taking us. But that also, it enables us to have a little bit of a predictive capability as well, to see beyond the here and the now into the future. And we know that the future is tough. I was in terms of trying to define, if you're saying the strategy is a 2025 strategy, is it realistic? How are you going to plot the milestones and the KPIs on the scorecard, because everything is moving and everything's very wobbly right now. So how am I going to hold my executives to account, in this kind of a scenario? What are the tools that we're going to have to use to get there? And so I think there must be some space for using the AI and data and algorithms to be more predictive as well. That will enable us to see trends a little more clearly and more quickly, so that we're not muddling around with stuff that's not going to take us anywhere, but it's going to get us to focus and prioritize on the things that are most important in terms of employee experience, supporting our businesses, advising our executives, getting executions done, optimally getting it done, and doing it, of course, within, budget always, and to the highest possible standards that we can. But we must understand that we live in very, very unpredictable times, and trying to bring a predictive capability into the equation is also very, very important to help us to shape our future.
I love there's a soundbite that I there also is in this future tech trajectory, which we all have to be on board, which is wonderful. We all agree that we have to be on board. It's just how quick are we going to come on board as an organization? How quick are we going to adapt? We recognizing that it's messy because it's emergent. I love that line that you said there. And it also talks to a line I always use is the risk of doing nothing is greater than the risk of doing something. Now, this is a great segue because we've kind of looked now at the forest view, the high level view when we talk about HR digital transformation. And I want to dive into some practical things here because I think we all struggle with different aspects of our business when it comes to actually doing this, because it can be so big when we look at, there's so many stakeholders, there's so many people to engage, we've got to get collaboration, we've got to get buy-in, we've got to get input. How do we just get movement and direction or follow? And because we're on the theme of animals, we had the caterpillar, we had the lion. I'm gonna use the elephant now. The old saying, how do you eat an elephant?
One chunk at a time.
One chunk at a time, spoon by spoon. So let's go down into a little chunk. What are some practical steps, some practical things, if you obviously allowed to share, that you have done or are doing in your business or businesses to start this HR digital transformation journey happening? Now, remember, I'm trying to move away from high level now. I want to go into some kind of practical ideas, examples, or even something that's not working. I'm gonna go back to you because I know we're going in that kind of circle. Let's change the circle up. So Shirley, let's go back to you, and then we'll go to Henneri and then Shelagh.
I think thank you very much. You're right. It's nice to conceptualize, and I think the translation into reality is always where it becomes very sticky. I think some of the practical steps is to build this digital transformation into your strategy and your purpose and your vision for your organization. It needs to be embedded at the strategic level. It is not something that you bolt on because somebody had an idea to automate 10 processes that are not good processes anyway. So I think that it is something that we need to see and embrace as a strategic thrust of our business. And this will be infused into everything that we do internally and externally. And the internal experience we're going to give our people and anybody that engages with us, the external experience we're going to give, that is what we must then distill into actionable points with time frames and people's names, and then the thing will get done. People will deliver. People will get the necessary resources to deliver. They'll get the budget. They'll get the people. They'll get the teams. They'll get the time, and we allow people to go off and do their magic and do the research and come and show us what it is that they're doing. Come and showcase what it is that they're doing over time. But I think the most important thing is that comes back to what is key in this discussion is experience. What is the experience? Because the point was about you also, practically making it happen. Sometimes we think we're making something practical, but nobody knows about it. It's not visible, not tangible. We don't feel it. We want to feel it.
Yeah.
We walk into the place. We want to engage with what is this new thing? What is this new journey?
Yeah.
And I think when we get to that point, that we know that we've actually, we've done it, and then you can try and measure it in different ways to make sure that holding execs accountable. It's you've delivered on your strategy. You've not only talked, but you've also done the walk. And so for me, that's important. And that requires of HR people to be more specific now, to go and speak, and, to be part of an engagement at the most senior level of the organization. Come to the board with your purpose, your vision, and how you're going to infuse this and how you're going to be measured and what impact they are going to see over time. And take us through that journey, take us through the narrative, tell us what the destinations along the way are going to be. I think that's what we need to do to make it practical.
Thank you, Shelagh. I love that because your view is so much from these multiple boards that you're on, and you can see how that comes through. That's wonderful. Shelagh, from your view, some kind of practical ideas.
Sure. Just two maybe to highlight. The one relates to the transformation that is happening now, because we're kind of in a second wave of digital transformation as AI and machine learning becomes a big driver. This is kind of what happened after stuff went online and got automated. And for me, key there is that knowledge is power. And giving all staff access to training and access to learning about what AI is, what it means, what are the opportunities that it brings is a really important part of letting people feel empowered rather than threatened by what this may hold for them. So that if we say our business is going to rely more on AI, when people hear that, they think, oh, wow, think of these opportunities, not, oh, hell, I'm going to lose my job. So there's a very important part to be played, I think, by training and by making sure that communication and information is clear and available. It's something that needs to be demystified. For a lot of people, AI is still this kind of science fiction-y term that they haven't quite yet got a grip of, and it needs to be explained. So we need to invest time and effort in doing that. Then I think the other thing is that as far as people's own experience of digital transformation goes, whether it's in their jobs or in HR-related processes, that we can drive trust through transparency. So trust through transparency, what that means for me is that we're working with a lot of sensitive personal information here. It's sensitive stuff. It's not just your name and your ID number, it's your performance rating. It's how people see you. It's what they've said about you. It's what you've said on your CV. There's a whole lot of personal information, your disability status, all sorts of things. And for people to trust that that information is stored and worked with securely and not shared or leaked out to people who shouldn't get it, we need to be sure that our systems actually confirm that for them, that they need to be designed in a way that you can see your own information and you can know that people who shouldn't see it aren't seeing it, that you should have enough trust in how your actual data is managed so that you don't have to have fears and anxieties about how your organization is working with your personal and very sensitive information.
Wonderful, thank you. That talks to it's a whole imperative around security. We talk, we've just seen the breaches that's happened in the financial sector. We've all got our notifications through our different banks and the risk that comes with that. Now you've got internal data, as you said, that are highly confidential. What happens? How do you use it? I mean, we know we haven't even got into PAPI yet, and we've got the future of data sovereignty, how that's going to impact the way that we've got to look at digital transformation in HR. But that's incredibly interesting. And I don't want to get caught up on that. Henneri, I know you're going to have a couple of examples because it's doing really incredible stuff with Simplify also.
Yeah, so I think Prof and Sheila's also touched on some valuable points, but I want to bring it back to clients that we deal with and some practical examples. So a couple of examples is where this digital transformation plays a critical role in some of our clients is we've got some retail clients that has really taken, from a recruitment perspective, the look at what is the experience, how important is the experience from a candidate perspective through this journey. Both in getting sufficient feedback through the process, making sure that the journey is as professional as possible. And the reason why they are so focused on that is because they've changed the viewpoint that these candidates are also their clients. So making that digital process very streamlined, effective, easy to use is a critical aspect to that element. And to tie in with what Sheila said, from a data perspective, it's also critical for these clients now to show that these technology platforms that they're using are secure, because when we're dealing with people, we are dealing with a lot of personal information. And I think the trust in systems is fading, purely because what we're seeing is happening all over the show, the breach that we had not so long ago. So building that trust with candidates, employees, making sure that they understand that this platform or tool that they're using is secure and their data is secure. And that translates into a number of things, because now you can bring it back into efficiencies, etc. Again. So when we deal with clients, there's always a goal. There's always a main goal. What do we want to achieve by making this process digital or automated? And it's critical that, once again, if we go back some of the points that we've discussed, that goal is linked to solving individual challenges, problems on the user, employee, candidate level, and that we address the challenges with easy to use functionalities, tools, and technology.
I mean, I love that. And I love actually how three of you almost gone through but the high level. Really, you got to build this and embed this into your company's vision, purpose, mission. So it's not something that comes in as a tactical level. This has got to be really coming from a strategic level. So it's not a bolt on to have, because we want to say that we care about our people. We've got to live and breathe it as an organization, and that means you've got to focus on the experience. You've got to focus on the people. I love Sheila, what you said. Knowledge is power, and it's all about creating access to information, providing learning mechanisms, empowering the employees through knowledge training and communications. And that's also part of the stakeholder engagement process, but is actually part of the trust building process to come on board. And that also talks to the candidate experience. How you're talking about the front end. The number of times that I know through my career that I have not engaged with a recruiter or something because I just found them just not professional is changing. And this is the digital transformation, and talks about customer experience. So we're embedding customer experience. So we're treating every stakeholder as a customer. I think that for me is key. We keep treating every stakeholder within the business and outside the business as a customer. And for me, I love that, because that's what I do. Our business is all about customer engagement and B2B. So that's incredibly exciting.
Dylan, if I may, just coming in on that point, just give a little thumbs up to Henneri and his team, because we were using a different applicant tracking system before we moved to Simplify, and I swear you will pry it out of the cold, dead hands of my HR team. They love it so much because it's easy to use and it's simple. And I think one mustn't lose sight of that ease of use factor for the end user and your customer. It's your candidate out there, but it's your HR user as well.
Which is a good point. You also don't have to recreate the wheel. You don't have to go and build these systems from scratch. There are tried and tested systems that are there, that are flexible and can be adapted to your organization, such as the Simplify platform, which is amazing. We're running out of time. I know that we're at 15:15. Andre, you've had some great questions there. I've tried to incorporate them into some of our thinking. I love the whole concept around the digital operating model. And there's also a good point saying that we're talking about HR digital transformation, which is a bit misleading, because we're actually talking about digital transformation. It doesn't happen just in HR. We're talking about digital transformation happens across the entire organization. But how important is the HR function in driving this change? Before, I know it's been led very much from an executive level, almost a strategy level, but to see this evolution to how important HR as a function is incredible. And I would love to continue this conversation, because there's so much I'd love to pick your brains on. But if you don't mind, if I could just end with a quick summation. So we've got all these points here, but there's something that really stood out to me, and we talked about human to human or person to person, how no matter this transformation is not technology, it's actually a people-based process. I was very fortunate to be invited by the UN Economic Commission to present at the World Investment Forum in Geneva, and had the joy of meeting Sophia, who is the most advanced humanoid in this world. Incredible being. And during the session, she got interviewed, and in front of this massive audience, they're talking about how she is learning as she's being interviewed from all the responses that are happening and the questions that are being posed. She's constantly learning. And the interviewer asked one question. He said, Sophia, you've learned all this and you continue to learn and you're engaging with humans. If there's one thing you could do, what would it be? In my mind, I'm thinking end world hunger, peace, all these kind of things, almost like a beauty pageant, headliners. But Sophia said, if there's one thing I could learn to do, or there's one thing I really want to do, is I want to learn to dance. So here you have the most advanced AI, artificial intelligence, humanoid in the world who wants to connect with the most basic essence of what it is to be human, the experience of being human. And what that really left for me is, as we go through this digital transformation journey, we need to be cognizant that the more digital we become, the more we have to give focus to human connections.
Yep.
And I think that's something that really resonated in a lot of the things you're saying. So with that, our time is up. Thank you. I know that you're going to be available in the different areas of the conference, as well as contact through the online portals to engage with you. I invite everyone who's listening to please reach out to Shirley, to Shelagh and Henneri. There is so much knowledge and experience there, incredible learnings, incredible products with the Simplify platform. Reach out, engage, and wishing all the best, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dylan. Thanks, panel.
Thanks, Dylan. Thanks, everyone.